a young man sets out on a faraway exploration trip. Suddenly, something goes wrong, and he ends up in a coma for about a week. When he finally wakes up and returns to the city, he finds that everyone is dead, bodies scattered everywhere, buildings completely destroyed. The remnants of the news report say a disaster has wiped out most of the world. Now he wanders around, feeling like he's the last person alive on Earth. What happened to the world? Why did everyone die? And more importantly, can this young man survive on his own? That's what we're going to see in today's video. It all begins with a young man named Ish. Ish lives in a secluded cabin in the woods, far from his family, because he's a geological engineer who studies rocks. He spends most of his time out in the wild, so he can be near the stones he's researching. Right now, Ish is getting ready and heading out to examine a particular rock. As soon as he arrives, he starts chipping away at the rocks to figure out their types and takes a few notes about them. Up to this point, everything seems fine, until a snake suddenly appears from a hole among the rocks and bites his hand before slithering away. Of course, Ish is in serious pain. He takes out his phone to call his family for help, hoping they can save him from the snake's venom. Unfortunately, his phone slips from his hand and tumbles among the rocks. He has no choice but to try cutting his hand open to drain the venom. That's exactly what he does, sucking out as much as he can. Then he forces himself to head back to the cabin, still dizzy from the effects of the venom. By the time he reaches his cabin, his body has almost completely given out. He tries calling out to anyone, looking for any sort of help, but can't manage it. Finally, he collapses onto the bed and loses consciousness. From this moment on, Ish drifts in and out of consciousness. Sometimes, he regains a bit of awareness at night and finds himself shivering with fever because of the snake bite. The next day, he wakes up to discover his hand is badly swollen where the snake bit him, and so on, day after day. After about a week, the venom finally leaves his system. Ish cleans himself up, gets dressed, and decides to go check on his family. He gets in his car and heads to his parents' house. After a short while, Ish arrives in the city, but as soon as he gets there, he notices that the streets are completely empty. He also sees a dead, decomposing police officer lying on the ground. It's clear that something terrible has happened, but Ish has no idea what's going on. Then he spots an official notice posted by the government, announcing that the country has been put under total lockdown because of a virus outbreak. Stunned, Ish races back to his car to drive to his parents' home and make sure they're safe. He switches on the radio, which is still picking up a faint signal, and hears that this lethal virus has spread everywhere around the globe, wiping out a huge portion of the population. After a while, he reaches the neighborhood where his parents live. It's also completely deserted, but he tries not to let that stop him. He goes straight inside their house and heads to his parents' bedroom. There, he completely breaks down in tears when he sees his father, who died of the virus and is now decomposed in bed. He also finds his mother's body in the bathroom. Overcome with grief, Ish can't stop crying, but he forces himself to push past the pain. He goes outside to the yard, digs a large hole, and buries both of his parents together in it. When he's done, Ish returns to the house to rest for the night. The next morning, he decides to search places that might still have living people. He goes to a church, only to find it filled with the bodies of those killed by the virus. Still refusing to give up hope, he heads to a supermarket, where he gathers weapons and gear so he can continue looking for survivors. Ish gets back in his car and decides to try another city. Maybe people are still alive there. The problem is, halfway there, he finds that the bridge to the next city has been closed off by the government. Frustrated and in tears, he feels completely powerless, yet he remains determined and takes a much longer route to reach that city. Because the trip is so long, night falls while he's on the road. After several hours, Ish finally arrives, only to discover that it's no different from his own city, completely empty. Feeling desperate, he leaves his car and enters a casino, hoping he might find someone there. Of course, he finds no one, so he loses it a bit. He has no idea where everyone could have gone. He calms himself down somewhat, goes to take a shower, and then walks into a hotel casino. Finally, he meets some actual survivors, Annie and her friend Milton. Naturally, Ish is absolutely shocked, but also overjoyed to see other humans. He immediately asks them what happened and where everyone is. Milton shows Ish the news he saved on his phone, handing it over so Ish can get the full story. Ish watches a reporter on the phone saying that a sudden mutation of this unknown virus has spread worldwide without any available vaccine. Hospitals everywhere filled up, leaving no room for new patients. For the record, Annie and her husband survived because a small percentage of people turned out to have a natural immunity, just like Aish. Hearing all this terrifies Aish. He asks if there might be any other survivors. Annie tells him they have no idea. Maybe it's just them, or maybe there are still people somewhere else. Aish gets really upset by this news. He leaves to find a place to sleep for the night and changes his clothes, crashing in some random spot. The next day, Aish wakes up and goes to have breakfast with Annie and Milton. Milton is thrilled to have Aish around because he thought it was just him and Annie left in the entire world. Now they're three, but Aish explains that he won't be staying with them. He wants to keep moving and keep searching for more people. Annie is so bothered by this that she leaves the table abruptly. Aish realizes she might have feelings for him. He follows her, suggesting she come along with him, but she refuses. She says she's going to stay here and wait to die. She's lost all hope after losing her daughters to the virus. Aish feels terribly sorry for her, but he goes on his way. Suddenly, as he's leaving, he hears 2 gunshots. He realizes Annie and Milton have taken their own lives, simply too weary to go on. Devastated, Aish drives off at high speed, crying the entire way. As he's speeding down the road, he spots a dog. He stops the car right away and is so relieved to see it. He picks the dog up, calls him Lucky, and decides that from now on, it'll be just him and Lucky. They return home together, though Aish has basically lost all hope by this point. A year passes. During this time, Aish settles into a repetitive daily routine. He gets up, goes for a jog, drives around the front of his house, and does the same thing day after day. A whole year goes by like this. Then, one day, Aish notices smoke rising from a chimney in a house just 2 streets away. Immediately, he's filled with excitement because that must mean someone is alive nearby. He grabs Lucky and jumps in his car, driving straight there. Aish is nervous, so he brings an axe for protection. It turns out the person inside is a woman who's just as afraid of him. She's aiming a sniper rifle at Aish to protect herself. Aish tries to reassure her that he's her neighbor and hasn't seen anyone else for a full year. When he noticed the smoke, he came to see if she was okay. At this, the woman lets her guard down and allows him inside. Her name is Emma, and she only arrived at this house 3 days ago. Emma makes Aish some tea, and they chat. She tells him how she was married and had a family before the outbreak. She had 2 daughters, but they all died from the virus. Ever since, she's been roaming from one place to another, looking for anyone who might still be alive. That's Emma's life story. Aish is deeply moved by her story. In fact, they hit it off so well that Emma tells him he can stay at her place tonight. She's glad to have found someone else because she thought she'd die alone. She even asks if he'll show her his home. Sure enough, the next day they both drive to his place. The place is a complete mess because Aish had lost all hope before meeting her. Emma looks around his garden, then calls him over and points out that all the food in his storage has gone bad. So they both decide to head to the supermarket to stock up on supplies, anything that might help them. Emma also mentions that there are still some perfectly good solar panels lying around. Aish says that's great. They'll come back for them later. They return to Aish's house with everything they've gathered. Emma cooks a meal from the supplies, and they sit together, eat, and chat for a while. You could say Aish has found his other half, and Emma feels the same. Time passes, and they live together. Emma becomes like Aish's savior, having appeared in his life and given him hope again. Eventually, they fall in love and get married. They decide to settle in Aish's home for good. However, there's a serious issue. The house has no electricity, which will make things difficult. So Aish grabs a neighbor's truck, one with a storage compartment, so he can load up the solar panels he saw at the supermarket and bring them back. He does exactly that, hauling the panels to his house. While he's busy with this, Emma comes over and tells him she's pregnant. Aish is shocked and not entirely happy about it, though not because he doesn't want kids. He's worried about Emma's safety since there are no hospitals or doctors around, and there's a real risk she could die in childbirth. He also asks how they're going to protect a baby in this ruined world. What if something happens to them? Who would look after the child then? Emma assures him they're going to be fine and that he needs to have faith in her and in the future. Convinced, Aish goes to the city library to collect any medical books he can find, books about anatomy, childbirth, and so forth, so he can learn enough to help Emma during labor. He also picks up baby supplies from the supermarket and returns home. Months go by, and Emma's belly grows. She's now close to giving birth. She tells Aish she wants to eat meat because she's been surviving on vegetables since the pregnancy began. So Aish takes his gun to the woods to hunt something. Luckily, he comes across a herd of cattle. He tries to catch one alive without killing it, but can't. So he ends up shooting a cow. He feels terrible about it, but what's done is done. Since he's already here, Aish decides to practice some dissection on the dead cow to gain more confidence about helping Emma when she's in labor. With some struggle, he manages to remove the cow's heart. He takes it back to Emma because it's particularly nutritious for pregnant women. Emma is puzzled and asks about the rest of the cow, since they could really use the rest of the meat. He explains that he can't carry the whole cow by himself at once, but he'll go back for it. Indeed, Aish returns later for more of the cow and hangs it in the storage shed. Lucky is already munching on some of it. Meanwhile, Aish has also finished installing all the solar panels. He and Emma go inside to test it out, and finally the house lights up. They're both overjoyed. Unfortunately, that joy doesn't last long because a pack of starving rats shows up. When Aish sees them, he warns Emma, and the two of them begin sealing off every entrance to keep the rodents out. They manage to block off most of them, and things seem okay, until they hear Lucky yelping in pain. They rush to see what's wrong, and discover they forgot Lucky outside, where the rats are attacking his leg. Aish quickly opens the door to rescue Lucky. He manages to save him just in time, and Emma takes Lucky upstairs. Sadly, a few rats slip into the house while Aish is holding the door open. Aish grabs a stick and starts whacking them one by one. When all that's over, he goes to check on Emma and Lucky. Together, they hold Lucky down so Emma can stitch up his deep rat bite. She disinfects the wound, and they all get some rest. Aish, however, can't really sleep because he's terrified that something like this will happen again. Maybe next time Emma will be the one in danger, and what if she dies during childbirth? Emma sees he's worried and reassures him that she's not leaving him. Plus, she's given birth twice before, and everything turned out fine. But as she says this, she can't help recalling her other children who died in the pandemic, and she starts crying. Aish does his best to comfort her. A few months later, Emma goes into labor, and Aish is there by her side, doing what he can. At first, it's really tough, and Aish starts fearing Emma might die just like his parents did. But thankfully, she manages to give birth to a baby girl. Aish is beside himself with joy. Emma decides to name their daughter Heather after Aish's mother, which makes him even happier. And that's how Aish and Emma's new family begins. To mark this, Emma writes their home's location, which they've named San Lupo, on a well-known wall in the city, so that if there are any other survivors, they can come find them. Two people do eventually see that address, and will learn who they are soon enough. Time passes, and 6 years go by since the outbreak first began. Aish is in the woods, picking apples, and drives back home in his truck. On the way, he accidentally runs over a small tiger without noticing. When he sees the injured tiger in pain, he retrieves his gun from the car, planning to put it out of its misery. But before he can do that, he notices a little girl wearing a backpack peering at him through the trees. When Aish sees her, she panics and runs away. Aish chases after her, wanting to save her from the dangers of the forest and bring her back to his place. We learn that her name is Evie. After a tense chase, Aish finally catches up to her. Evie screams and lashes out at him because she's terrified. Aish promises he won't hurt her and tells her that he's a father with a son and daughter at home, and that he lives in a place called San Lupo with 2 other people. Quick note, during those 6 years, Emma gave birth to a second child with Aish, a boy named Alex. Aish invites Evie to come with him to San Lupo for her own safety. He tries approaching her gently, but she keeps screaming, so he backs off and tells her he'll wait at his car for a while. If she decides to come, he'll share his apples with her and take her home. He leaves her be and goes back to his truck. The tiger that was lying in front of it has vanished. It must have run off. Aish is more concerned about Evie, so he waits. Sure enough, after a little while, Evie cautiously makes her way to the truck. Aish gives her an apple, which she devours as if she's starving. Then she climbs into the back of the truck and falls silent, letting Aish drive her to his home. When they arrive, Emma, Heather, and Alex come out to greet him. By the way, Emma is expecting their 3rd child. Evie has woken up, and Aish introduces her to his wife and kids, but Evie doesn't respond. They don't want to push her, so they simply take the apples inside. Inside the house, we meet Jorge, who's waiting for them. If you recall, he's the person who read Emma's note on the city wall 6 years ago. His wife, Maureen, is also here with him. Ish tells Jorge about Evie's strange behavior. Jorge suggests that Evie might be on the autism spectrum, but Ish thinks she might be suffering from severe trauma caused by something that happened to her. Emma advises Ish to go back to the spot where he found Evie. Maybe her family is still there. Just then, Maureen walks in, very eager to see Evie. She leaves with Emma and Ish to check on the girl. Early the next morning, Ish and Jorge drive back to the forest where Ish found Evie, hoping to find her family. Ish spots a small cabin and goes inside. To his horror, it's filled with torture devices. He realizes right away that Evie was being tortured there, so he and Jorge hurry back home. Meanwhile, Maureen is up early too, and she's made breakfast for Evie. She tries to feed her, but Evie is still scared. Evie grabs Maureen's hand, and the food falls to the ground. Suddenly, Evie notices scars on Maureen's arm, old wounds that look like hers. Evie immediately lets go of Maureen's hand. Maureen senses this might help bond with her, so she shows Evie the scars on her neck and explains she was also abused as a child. That calms Evie down, and she follows Maureen into the house. Maureen takes her to shower, then steps out to find clothes for her. When she spots Evie's backpack, she opens it, hoping for any clues about who she is. Inside, she finds a letter written by Evie's mother before she died. Reading it makes Maureen cry. She gives the letter to Ish when he and Jorge return from the forest. Maureen reads the letter out loud for everyone. They learn that Evie's father lost his mind when the outbreak started and began torturing her to the point that she lost her ability to speak. Evie's mother had caught the virus herself and was too weak to protect her. All she could do was write that letter, hoping that whoever found Evie later would accept her. Time passes, and Emma gives birth to her third child with Ish, a boy they named Joey. The whole group continues living happily together in San Lupo. 7 more years go by, making it 14 years since the start of the pandemic. Everyone is now living like one big family. It's Heather's 14th birthday. After the celebration, Ish takes his youngest son, Joey, to the library because the boy loves reading about what life was like before. Everything is going fine until a violent storm suddenly hits, so powerful that it knocks over the solar panel posts. Ish grabs Joey, and they rush back home immediately. Once they arrive, Ish does a head count to see if everyone's there, and Heather tells him Lucky is missing. Panicking, Ish runs out into the storm, calling Lucky's name until he finds his old companion crushed under a fallen tree, killed by the force of the storm. In a heartbreaking scene, Ish cries out in grief over the very first friend who accompanied him on his journey, and Emma joins him, weeping over Lucky as well. Ish carries Lucky's body back. After the storm subsides the next day, he buries Lucky next to his parents. Then he and Jorge begin cutting wood to repair everything that got destroyed by the storm. After a while, Ish heads back toward the house and sees his son Joey playing with a toy car in the woods, with Evie nearby. Suddenly, without any warning, a tiger appears, ready to pounce on Joey. Ish yells at Evie to grab Joey and run, which she does, but the tiger attacks Ish, clawing him savagely and dragging him into the forest, presumably to eat him. In that moment of shock, Evie starts speaking again. She screams for help, calling for someone to save Ish. Because of Evie's screams, everyone rushes over and manages to rescue Ish. They take him to the clinic where Dr. Molly is waiting. At this point, Ish's entire body is bleeding badly because the tiger's claws left him severely wounded. In fact, not only Molly, but practically everyone there is working together to save him. Suddenly, Ish stops breathing altogether, so they quickly hook him up to a ventilator Molly had retrieved from the hospital. Thankfully, they manage to save Ish. Once he starts breathing again, Molly stitches up his wounds. Meanwhile, Emma grabs her sniper rifle and heads to the spot where Ish was attacked by the tiger, hell-bent on revenge. When she finally sees it, she doesn't hesitate. She kills it on the spot. 2 months later, Ish is back home, fully recovered. Everyone welcomes him happily. Life settles down again, and 3 more years pass. Now it's been a total of 17 years since the outbreak began. We see Joey, now grown up, returning from the shore where he's been fishing. His older brother, Alex, spots him as soon as he walks through the gate. By the way, Alex's job is to keep watch from a guard tower and warn everyone if something happens. But Alex hates this assignment and feels like their father, Ish, doesn't pay any attention to him, focusing instead on Joey. His resentment grows when he sees Ish rush out to greet Joey at the gate without even glancing in his direction. At the same time, Heather and Reef have also grown up. Now they're exploring nearby houses and places together. They come across a house filled with all sorts of things they've never seen before. This adventure excites them, sparking a desire to explore the wider world. They make a plan to set off on a journey together. Heather tells her mom, Emma, about this plan when she gets back. Emma actually likes the idea, so without hesitation, she goes to Ish and convinces him to let Heather travel and explore with Reef. Ish refuses at first, but Emma persuades him in the end. The next day, we see Heather and Reef preparing themselves in the car they'll be traveling in. Everyone is there to say goodbye. Some time passes. Evie is preparing a meal when she notices there's no water coming from the tap. She alerts Ish that the water has stopped. Immediately, Ish grabs Jorge and Azra and drives out to the dam that channels water from the river to their home. They're shocked to find the river is almost dry, and to make matters worse, the main pipe is badly broken, beyond easy repair. At that moment, Ish hears the sound of vehicles passing above them on the bridge. His sense of alarm kicks in, and he and the others hurry back to their car to get to San Lupo. Unfortunately, the people in the vehicles spot Aisha's car. By the time Aish and the others make it home, that group has followed them and arrives shortly afterward. Their leader introduces himself as Charlie and introduces his companions. As usual, Aish tells them to keep moving since he doesn't trust strangers. But Charlie points out that Aisha's water supply is nearly gone, while he has a machine that can drill for groundwater. He offers to dig a well for them in exchange for being allowed into San Lupo, because otherwise, Ish and his family are in serious danger with no water. Aish realizes they'll die without a new water source, so he allows them through the gate and even offers them food. While they're eating, Aish asks how long it'll take to dig the well and what Charlie wants in return. Charlie replies that it should take about 3 days, and all he wants afterward is fuel and food for the road, so he can continue his travels once the well is done. Aish agrees, and Charlie's crew gets to work setting up the drilling equipment. After a while, they get tired and take a break to chat with Ish and the others, getting to know each other better. But during the conversation, Ish and Emma notice the unsettling way Charlie is looking at Evie, which makes them uneasy. They do nothing about it for the moment, though. The next day, Charlie resumes drilling the well while Ish and his family sit down for breakfast. Ish notices that Alex is in a hurry to finish eating so he can go help Charlie. Worried about Alex's safety, Ish asks him to stay and help him instead of assisting Charlie. But Alex is confused and angry. He's never been asked to help Aish with anything before, and Aish usually just asks Joey for help. Now that Alex is trying to be useful by pitching in with the well, Aish is telling him not to. Furious, Alex storms off to assist Charlie anyway. When Alex arrives at the drill site, he helps load the rocks into the cart. Charlie stands near the drill with his buddy Corey, who mentions that drilling this way isn't getting them anywhere. Ish appears and asks how much longer until they hit water. Charlie tells him there might not even be water here in the first place. Then he goes back to the machine, changes the drilling head, and keeps working. Before long, this new drilling tool breaks through the solid rock that's likely covering an underground water supply. Everyone is excited because the rock layer signals water is close. As they continue drilling, spirits are high. People are singing. Aish, however, feels like he's losing his family as Charlie starts taking charge. Feeling overwhelmed, Aish heads into the woods to think by himself. Unfortunately, his mind is so scattered that he ends up lost. Hours later, Emma starts getting worried because Aish has been gone a long time. She puts on her gear to go look for him in the forest, and Joey asks if he can come along. Just then, Aish stumbles back, looking completely exhausted. He heads straight to his room to sleep, and Emma follows him in, scolding him for making her worry. He apologizes, and the tension passes. On the third and final day of drilling, Charlie and his crew finally strike water, and everyone celebrates, cheering wildly. Ish, however, remains uneasy. He's afraid Charlie won't honor their deal and leave. Sure enough, Ish goes over and thanks Charlie, then tells him he's got the promised fuel ready, so Charlie and his group can now move on. Charlie denies they ever made such an arrangement and says they're staying. Aish is stunned and walks away. That same night, everyone is partying and dancing to celebrate the successful well. They also raise a toast to Charlie for making it happen. After the festivities, everyone heads off to bed. Ish can't sleep, so he steps out onto the balcony. It's quiet and peaceful until he hears screaming coming from Evie's room. He glances down from the balcony and sees Silas, one of Charlie's men, standing guard outside Evie's door. Then he watches Charlie step out of her room. Ish realizes, horrified, that Charlie has assaulted Evie. He races downstairs, barges into Evie's room, and brings her into the main house where the others gather. Evie is in tears, and Maureen is equally devastated, treating Evie like her own daughter. Ish and the group hold a sort of emergency meeting to decide what to do about Charlie. Emma blames herself for letting him into San Lupo in the first place, when Ish was opposed from the start. Furious, Emma insists they kill Charlie. They take a vote on whether he should be executed. Most people, including Jorge, are initially reluctant. However, Emma points out that if they let Charlie go, he could return. One by one, they agree, though Jorge still resists until Maureen begs him through her tears, and finally he gives in. Meanwhile, Charlie is talking to Silas, outlining their real plan from the beginning: kill everyone in San Lupo and take the place for themselves, especially now that there's a working well. Confident, Charlie heads to his room for the night. A while later, Ish and the others have finalized their plan. Ish goes and knocks on Charlie's door, asking him to come out. Charlie notices Ish holding a hammer and quickly draws his own knife, taunting him. Ish signals the group with the words San Lupo, and they all appear armed, surrounding Charlie. Without hesitation, Ish smashes Charlie in the face with the hammer, knocking him to the ground. In a frenzy, he keeps bashing Charlie over and over, even after Charlie is clearly dead. Azra steps in to pull Ish away from the lifeless body. Afterward, Ish goes home and starts cleaning the blood off his clothes and hammer. He breaks down in tears, anguished at having taken a life. Emma comes to him and insists Charlie got exactly what he deserved. The next day, Molly, Jean, and Azra meet with Perry, Charlie's fiancé, to tell her he's dead. She panics, assuming they'll kill her as well, but Jean reassures her that she can stay in San Lupo without fear. Meanwhile, the rest of Charlie's group has woken up to find him missing. They go to check by the well, figuring he might be there, only to find Emma standing guard. She informs them Charlie is dead. Furious, Silas grips his knife, ready to attack Emma, but she whips out a concealed sniper rifle. At the same time, Aisha emerges and gives them a choice: stay peacefully or leave. Corey decides to stay, and so do all the others, except Silas, who curses at them, grabs his bag, and drives away. Ish closes the gate behind him. Ironically, a few minutes later, Silas comes back, begging Ish to let him in because he has nowhere else to go. He pleads that Charlie forced him into everything. Ish doesn't buy it. He reminds Silas that he stood guard while Evie was attacked, so there's no way he's coming back to San Lupo. Silas realizes Ish is serious, gets in his car, and departs in silence. 3 years go by, making it a full 20 years since the outbreak began. Everyone is gathered today because something special is happening. Joey has built a solar-powered aircraft capable of reaching 200 feet in altitude. Everyone is excited about his invention, and they celebrate joyously. The atmosphere in San Lupo is happy and relaxed. That night, they all head to bed. Suddenly, Joey rushes into his parents' room, saying he feels unwell, and collapses right there. Panicking, Aish picks him up and takes him to Molly's clinic. Molly immediately starts packing ice around Joey because his fever is dangerously high. She also warns Ish that he should stay back, suspecting Joey might have the same deadly virus that once wiped out humanity. Aish refuses to accept that, claiming it's probably just a normal illness that antibiotics can cure. Molly admits she has no antibiotics left. At that moment, Benny walks in with identical symptoms. Aish is thrown into shock. Maybe Molly is right, and this is the deadly virus returned. In just a few hours, several more people get sick, including Corey. Alarmed by how fast it's spreading, Aish takes Joey home to care for him personally, sleeping beside his son through the night to watch over him. By morning, Joey is still ill. Suddenly, Emma bursts in, thrilled because Heather has returned from her trip. Heather runs to her father, sobbing, and tells them Reef died during their travels. Emma hugs her daughter, trying to console her. Heather goes to lie down next to Joey to comfort him, knowing he'll be happy to see she's back. Indeed, he brightens up at the sight of her. But Ish, terrified of losing Joey, decides he desperately needs to find antibiotics. Without hesitation, he fits a spare wheel into his car and heads off at top speed, returning to the bridge the government had previously sealed off. He pulls the wheel from the car and squeezes it through an opening so he can cross on foot with a bike to the other side, aiming to get to the city to find any antibiotics. The plan works, and after some time, he makes it to the city's hospital and searches every nook and cranny for medicine. Eventually, he finds some, fills his bag, and races back to San Lupo. Meanwhile, Heather is sitting with Azra and Jean, describing how Reef died. Even before she starts, they're in tears, bracing themselves for the worst. Heather explains that she and Reef headed north, just as Ish suggested. They were thrilled to find a beautiful beach where they pitched a tent and stayed for quite a while, not venturing far because they were so happy there. But after a time, isolation got to them. They grew restless and decided to continue traveling, searching for more survivors or new discoveries. They drove from one city to another, always finding them completely deserted. Then, they reached a particular city covered with strange numbers and directional arrows scrawled all over the walls. Heather and Reef couldn't understand what those numbers meant, so they didn't pay much attention. They kept searching the city and found nothing. So after years of trying, they decided to head back to San Lupo. They gathered their belongings and set off through the woods on foot, having traveled in their car for so long that it probably broke down over time. At some point, they grew tired and set up camp in a clearing. Suddenly, a stranger appeared, grabbed Reef, and threatened to kill him unless Heather handed over all their food and water. To her horror, it was Silas, the man Aish had banished from San Lupo years ago. He looked different after all this time, ragged and desperate. Silas was still holding Reef captive, demanding their supplies. Reef tried to fight back, so Silas stabbed him with his knife. Heather was so shocked that she hurled the tent stake hatchet she'd been using straight at Silas, killing him on the spot. She threw herself at Reef, sobbing, promising to do whatever it took to save him. But Reef's last words were that he only cared that Heather was safe. Then he died in front of her, leaving her completely shattered. Heather buried Reef before returning to San Lupo. Now she breaks down in tears again after telling the whole story to Azra and Jean, who can only cry with her and try to console her. Once she calms down a bit, Heather goes upstairs to sit with Joey to see if he needs anything. Joey sadly tells her he's noticed that Aish seems convinced he won't survive, but Heather comforts him. Then Aish arrives, having finally returned with the meds from the other city. He hastily empties his bag, desperate to save Joey. He's about to give him a blood transfusion, thinking some people have immunity to the virus in their blood, but Heather stops him and says it's too late for that. She also explains that on her travels, she found a medical tree, which she gave to Molly to develop into a possible antidote that could lessen the virus's effects. Ish is still worried that Molly's attempt might fail. He's visibly shaken. 2 days later, Molly and Heather manage to create a treatment that eases the virus's symptoms. Indeed, it's apparently the same disease that once destroyed humanity, but now it's a milder strain. The remedy helps, but sadly, it doesn't work on everyone. As Heather steps out of the bus where they've quarantined patients, she runs into Corey, who's recovered thanks to the treatment. He's come to check on his sick friends. He asks Heather what the attacker who killed Reef looked like. She describes a desperate-looking man with a golden tattoo on his arm. Corey immediately realizes it must have been Silas. He decides not to tell anyone in San Lupo, worried that they'd all blame themselves for letting Silas leave instead of dealing with him permanently. Back with Joey, his condition hasn't improved. The cure had no effect on him. He's in terrible shape, and Aish and Emma are frantic. Ultimately, the virus overwhelms Joey, and he dies with his parents weeping at his side. They bury him beside his grandparents and Lucky. Joey's death utterly breaks Aish, sending him right back to his darkest place. In his grief, he storms up to the wall where San Lupo is written and defaces it. Then he heads to the library, intending to burn the books Joey loved so much. Before he can do it, Emma walks in, talks him down, and convinces him not to destroy the books. Ish finally regains a measure of calm. The next day, Ish gathers his remaining children, Heather and Alex, along with Jorge and Maureen's kids and Azra and Jean's kids. He apologizes for overprotecting them and never letting them leave San Lupo, realizing now they must adapt to the outside world if they want to truly live and survive. Later, Ish goes to Joey's room to collect his books and pack them up. While he's sorting through them, he stumbles upon his own journal, which turns out Joey must have borrowed. Curious, Ish flips through it and finds detailed schematics Joey had drawn up. They outline plans for a radio tower that could communicate with any remaining radio towers around the globe, along with a list of frequency numbers for those towers. Ish immediately gathers everyone and explains that they're going to build the radio tower so they can connect with other survivors. Thrilled by the possibility, they begin construction without hesitation. After some time, we see Ish and Azra on top of the guard tower, installing the radio receiver. Ish apologizes to Azra for ever doubting him when he first arrived at San Lupo. Azra appreciates this, and they share a hug. Meanwhile, Maureen and Alex are inside fixing up the radio transmitter. Maureen assures Alex that he's misunderstanding his father and that Aish loves him just as much as he loved Joey. Alex is visibly moved and relieved. Days later, everything is finally ready. Aish sits down to test all the frequencies Joey listed, one after another, trying country after country but getting no response. Emma comes in and notices he's upset. She invites him outside to play baseball with the family for a bit, just to clear his head. He agrees, and they all go out to the yard together, using a lemon as a makeshift baseball. It's a warm, happy moment with everyone enjoying themselves. Heather, however, isn't quite sure how the scoring works, so Aish explains it to her. As he's talking, Heather suddenly remembers the mysterious numbers she and Reef saw painted everywhere in that city. She tells her father about them, and Aish instantly realizes they could be radio frequencies for another group of survivors. Aish lights up with excitement and bolts back to the radio transmitter, with everyone following. He tries the new numbers Heather recalls. At first, there's no answer, until suddenly, out of nowhere, they hear a young woman's voice on the radio. The entire group is stunned, then elated to discover there are others still alive. They pass the radio around, talking to this girl one by one, their excitement growing by the second. Aish asks where they are and how many survivors are with them. The girl says they live by a river, so they can fish and get water, and that their group has 77 people in total. Everyone is overjoyed, hugging one another in disbelief. Aish gives them the location of San Lupo, inviting all 77 to join them and form a bigger community. 30 more years pass, 50 years since the outbreak first began. Aish is still alive, but now an old man. He walks through San Lupo with his grandson Jack, Heather's oldest child, since Heather married someone from the 77 who arrived. By now, San Lupo has grown into a full-fledged village, with families in each house, and given enough time, it might grow into a city, even a nation, and that's it.